All right, get ready, because we're about to take a deep dive into a galaxy far, far away.
But one that has surprisingly close ties to our own world. Today we're exploring the legacy of Star Wars. And yeah, I know it's huge. Movies, shows, books, even theme parks.
Hmm,
Merchandise galore.
it's a lot.
It's massive, a cultural behemoth. So we're going to try not to get lost in that galaxy and instead really try to uncover the hows and whys behind Star Wars' impact. Get ready for some hopefully surprising facts about its influence on filmmaking. Like, did you know that the Star Wars merchandise empire alone is actually worth more than most countries' entire economies?
Wow.
That's wild. It really shows you the power of tapping into something that deeply resonates with audiences.
Totally.
Now, Star Wars didn't just ride a wave of popularity, it created a whole new wave,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to Hollywood.
Oh, for sure. Before Star Wars, studios saw the summer as a dead zone for movies.
Like nobody wants to go to a dark theater when it's nice out.
Exactly. They figured people would rather be outside. Then Jaws came out in 75,
Oh.
which hinted at a change.
Mm.
And then Star Wars, just 2 years later, solidified it, just smashed box office records.
Wow.
It really made those studios rethink their whole summer release strategy.
That's wild. So Star Wars proved that people craved adventure, even in the heat of summer.
Exactly. It set the stage for what we call now franchise filmmaking.
Franchise filmmaking.
Those interconnected stories told across multiple films, usually with all the merchandising and fan events and everything else.
That's the whole thing.
Before Star Wars, sequels weren't guaranteed moneymakers.
Interesting.
Star Wars normalized that idea. It created a model for massive franchises, like even the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we see today.
Totally. You
Yeah.
can definitely see those echoes of Star Wars in those massive interconnected universes. But speaking of game changers, what about the special effects? ILM, that legendary special effects house, wouldn't even exist without Star Wars, right?
Absolutely not. George Lucas created ILM specifically to bring his vision for Star Wars to life. They were pioneers. They used miniatures, motion control cameras, all sorts of groundbreaking visual effects.
It's like wizardry,
Yeah,
movie magic.
and their impact goes way beyond Star Wars, of course. ILM has gone on to work on iconic films like Jurassic Park, Terminator 2,
Oh, wow.
countless others.
I mean, it's almost impossible to imagine those movies without the magic that ILM brought to them.
I know. And let's not forget the sound design.
Oh, right.
Ben Burtt, the genius behind Star Wars sound design,
Yeah.
created that iconic lightsaber hum, R2-D2's beeps and boops. It's like a whole soundscape for that universe.
It's true. Every time I hear lightsaber, I think about how inventive and impactful his work was.
And that inventiveness wasn't limited to Star Wars. He co-founded Skywalker Sound, and through that, he revolutionized audio post-production. It impacted not just sci-fi, but the entire film industry.
Talk about a lasting legacy. Speaking of legacies, let's shift gears now and talk about the story itself. How did Star Wars change the way we tell stories? Because it's more than just, spaceships and lightsabers.
It definitely goes beyond that.
Yeah.
Well, for one thing, Star Wars brought this old storytelling structure to everyone's attention again. It's called the hero's journey.
Okay, yeah. Remind me about that. I feel like I've heard of that.
It's this whole idea that myths and stories, like going way back, all share a similar structure. This scholar, Joseph Campbell, called it the monomyth.
Right.
He
Okay.
even wrote a whole book about it, The Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Okay.
Yeah, so how does Star Wars fit into all this?
Yeah.
Well, George Lucas actually used that hero's journey as like a framework, like a template for Luke Skywalker's whole arc. And it's so interesting how he took this super old framework and somehow made it feel fresh and exciting again for modern audiences.
Right.
And the crazy thing is, once you start to see it, you see that hero's journey everywhere.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah, The Matrix, Harry Potter, even Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
All those heroes, they follow that same basic structure.
That's amazing. So it shows those classic storytelling elements really can be timeless,
Totally.
even in a galaxy far, far away, right?
Exactly.
Speaking of timeless, Darth Vader, right? He is like the ultimate villain. But I always wondered, is there more to him?
Oh, absolutely.
What meets the eye?
Yeah, Darth Vader's complexity, it set a whole new standard for villains on screen.
Right.
He's not just evil just to be evil.
Yeah.
There's a whole backstory there, psychological depth we hadn't really seen before.
It's true. And you even kind of start to understand his motivations. You almost empathize with him a little bit,
Right.
which just makes him that much more compelling of a villain.
Exactly. And his arc ties into that whole concept of the Force, too.
Oh, right.
It's not just like good versus evil.
Right.
It's about this balance, temptation, redemption, like all these themes that are just so much deeper.
Totally. That's part of what makes those movies so captivating. It's more than just the action. It's
Right.
exploring these universal themes, but within this huge, space opera.
Exactly.
Oh, and we can't forget those cliffhangers. The Empire Strikes Back, that ending blew my mind as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
It seems so normal now, but was that a new thing back then?
Yeah, telling a story over many movies.
Yeah, with those kind of cliffhangers.
Totally. Star Wars invented that sense of anticipation, that need to know what happens next.
Right.
They practically invented, like, binge watching before binge watching was even a thing.
That's so true. It's crazy to think about how Star Wars changed the game for both filmmaking and storytelling. But its impact, it goes way beyond just the screen. Let's talk about its cultural influence for a sec. Star Wars fandom is massive. Did it play a role in creating this whole fandom culture we see today?
Oh, 100%. It's hard to say how big its influence really is. Star Wars was doing it all first. Conventions, fan clubs, cosplay, everything. They were doing it from the beginning.
And what about online? I mean, we're doing a deep dive now, but Star Wars fans, they were already dissecting those movies, coming up with theories, debating every little detail.
Oh, yeah. Before the internet even.
Long before the internet as we know it today.
Absolutely. Fans were analyzing everything.
Mm.
Every detail, every single line of dialogue, looking for clues, hidden meanings, whatever they could find. It really created this feeling of community and shared passion,
Totally.
which is what fandom is all about.
It's amazing to me how a story about spaceships and lightsabers could connect with so many people
I know it.
on such a deep level.
It's because those spaceships and lightsabers are just the beginning,
Right.
Star Wars is about rebellion and hope, good versus evil.
It's true.
Those are universal themes. They speak to something way deeper in all of us.
Right.
People have even used Star Wars for political commentary.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like how?
They compare the Empire to real-world governments, ones that aren't so great.
Wow.
It's true.
It's crazy how relevant it still is.
Yeah,
It shows how much those stories can really resonate with us.
it's true.
And speaking of amazing things, I've always been blown away by the technology in those films, especially those early CGI characters.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they weren't perfect, they were revolutionary for their time.
They were incredible.
How did Star Wars continue to, push those boundaries?
You're right. Those early CGI characters were groundbreaking.
Sure.
Jar Binks might get a bad rap now, but back then, seeing a fully CGI character like that on screen was mind-blowing. And Star Wars has continued to innovate. Take The Mandalorian, for example. They use this amazing LED screen technology called StageCraft, filming in front of giant LED walls that display realistic backgrounds in real time.
Wait, really? So instead of a green screen, it's like they're actually on location.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's revolutionized how filmmakers create immersive environments on set. And it's no surprise that other shows and films are now using StageCraft too. Star Wars keeps raising the bar for what's possible.
That's incredible. It's amazing how this franchise keeps finding new ways to blend storytelling and technology. And speaking of blending, I can't forget about video games. As a gamer myself, I've always been fascinated by how Star Wars has influenced the gaming world.
It's had a massive impact. We're talking classic titles like Knights of the Old Republic, which prove that video games could tell complex, emotionally resonant stories, just like films. And then you have games like Jedi, Fallen Order, pushing the boundaries of immersive gameplay and stunning graphics, all while delivering a compelling story within the Star Wars universe.
It goes to show that the Force is strong with Star Wars in all forms of media. Okay, one last thing we have to talk about, merchandise. It's everywhere. I mean, every kid in the 80s wanted a lightsaber. Was Star Wars really that big for selling stuff?
It practically wrote the playbook on movie merchandising. We're talking action figures, lunchboxes, clothes, you name it, they slapped a Star Wars logo on it.
I definitely had my fair share of Star Wars toys growing up.
It was brilliant, really. Star Wars showed studios the immense earning potential tied to creating a whole universe of merchandise around a film. Remember that staggering $70 billion merchandise empire we mentioned earlier? That's more than the entire GDP of most countries.
That's an incredible way to put it into perspective. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the silver screen to video games and everything in between.
It's a vast universe, after all.
It really is. So for our listeners who might be feeling a little overwhelmed by the sheer scope of the Star Wars legacy, what would you say is the key takeaway? Why does all of this matter?
I think it boils down to this. Star Wars is a testament to the enduring power of storytelling. Those classic myths, the heroes and villains, the battles between good and evil, they resonate with us on a deep human level, regardless of whether it's happening in a galaxy far, far away or right here on Earth. But it's more than just the stories themselves. Star Wars has consistently pushed the boundaries of technology to bring those stories to life, captivating audiences for decades and influencing countless other films, shows, and games. It's that powerful combination of storytelling and innovation that makes Star Wars such an important part of our cultural landscape.
Beautifully said, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. If Star Wars, a story that started with spaceships and lightsabers, can have such a profound impact on our world, it makes you think about the power of the stories we tell, even in our own lives. Thank you for joining us on this epic journey, and may the Force be with you.